And welcome back to part 4 of our compatibility and astrology series. This series focusing on Jennifer Lopez and her many famous loves. The difficult, challenging, and nearly impossible task of being Jennifer Lopez in love. After the age of 51 years old, she has had 3 divorces, 3 broken marriage engagements, and she is not giving up. But why is it so hard for some people to find their happy ending? Ben Affleck. From 2002 to 2004, they were involved hot and heavy with each other in a relationship that led to a broken engagement. 17 years later, in 2021, they have returned to each other to rekindle an old romance. But the question is, will it last? And will they actually get to the wedding altar this time? So naturally, of course, all of the gossip magazines are on fire speculating about this relationship and, hopeful and optimistic about romantic possibilities, which is good. We should be hopeful and optimistic and want good things for people. The old saying, if I can't have it in my life, somebody else should at least be able to be happy, right? But there are some considerations here about her ability to maintain a relationship as well as, his ability and, to find true love and happiness in this lifetime. So remember, we all have our karmic crosses to bear, and it's not all sunshine and lollipops for everybody. So with that said, when we look at the compatibility between people, it's a lot more complicated than planet A trines planet B and planet C, aspects planet D, E, and F. It's if only it were that simple. Matchmakers would be making a fortune and literally be so successful they'd work themselves right out of business. Okay, now with this particular video, we are going to continue on from where we did before because we already looked at the compatibility between the charts of Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez. So we're going to pick up where we left off from there. And now we're going to look at what's going on in terms of predictive things, right? Planetary patterns that are activating their charts that may have incited or inflamed their hearts and their groins and brought them back together again. And I can tell you that marriage is definitely on their minds. So, this also now becomes a question of, is this really a good idea? Or is this just libidinous, cosmically driven impulse driving them down this particular train of thought? So for those of you who are interested in the first half of the chart analysis, the compatibility between them, I will put a link below so you can get to it. And this is going to pick up, for those of you who've already seen it, this video is going to pick up from where we left off there, and now we're going to move forward with some other stuff because they do have some really energetic chart activation going on. All right, and just to review, again, we have a birth time for Ben. We do not have a birth time for Jennifer Lopez. So without an accurate birth time for both parties, it makes it impossible to set up some of the relationship charts that are available, Davison and all that sort of time space. But what we can use is a coalescent and also understand that all of your relationship charts, the newfangled composite charts and things of that nature are experimental, so we're still learning a lot about them. And also, it is not the definitive answer as far as compatibility with somebody. Having a fantastic composite chart will not overcome all of the deficits and weaknesses when you analyze the two charts against the natal charts against each other as separate charts. So we have to look at all of these things together to kind of figure out where the spokes in the wheel go. All right. Now, so with that said, let's take a look at this. So the first thing is we may or may not have a sun-moon conjunction in the coalescent chart because we don't know where her moon exactly is in her chart because we have an indefinite time. So right here is what we're looking at. So it potentially is a new moon chart in the coalescent, which would indicate some type of brand new beginning on a very spiritual or deep karmic level for them. But again, we don't know where the moon is. And this chart is not based on planetary positions as much as planetary positions and math calculations to find midpoints between them. So I would use that with a grain of salt. Now, that new moon, right, is also trining Jupiter. So we know they feel good with each other. This relationship lifts them up and elevates them and makes them feel better about life. And that's a great thing to have in any kind of relationship with anybody. We want those kinds of people in our life that help make us more buoyant and optimistic to withstand the buffets, of life's little storms. So right there, we're off to a good start. So we know that they enjoy being around each other because they're very positive and inspiring for each other. Now, Mercury and Saturn trines Mars. So Mercury and Saturn in the coalescent chart is right here, and it's trining Mars over here. Now, when you're looking at coalescent charts, don't look at the signs, because the signs are actually symbolic notations for mathematical placements. So rather than saying Neptune is at 326 degrees 48 minutes, making an aspect to Venus at 126 degrees 12 minutes, that gets a little confusing, right? So we try to make this simpler. So it's the degree in the minute and the sign. The sign is literally just a symbol or an easier shorthand for determining where this planet is sitting in a 360-degree wheel. And we'll do that in another chart, but just don't worry about where the sign placements are when you're looking at composites, coalescence, and Davidson charts, because the signs don't actually mean anything in this respect. So with Mercury, Saturn trining Mars, one of the things that we can expect is that there's a very, there would be a very structured, not rigid, but certainly very structured and coordinated, organized approach to how they do things and get things done. There's a bit of the, I'm not going to say the reformer, but it's that thing where, so for example, if you hire a professional organizer to come to your house, right, and they come in and they clean through your closet and organize everything, and nothing's really changed. I mean, you still have the stuff you started with, but everything is in a place that makes sense now, right? There's that bringing order into chaos sort of stuff. So these two spend a lot of time, or will successfully spend a lot of their energy working on things that help improve them. Also, too, Mars-Saturn combinations are work planets, are work combinations. So working together will be a thing for them. And with that said, hopefully this time we'll have a much better movie than Geely, the last thing they worked on. Good God. But with this Mercury-Saturn-Mars combination, do not be surprised if discussions about working together on a film again, or working together on a project together again, comes up as a major focus in their relationship during the time that they're together. Okay. Now, we have Venus trining Pluto. So the coalescent Venus is here, and it's near Uranus. So we may or may not use that. So hold that thought for a second. Just put a push pin in that. And it is trining Pluto. Trining? What the hell was I saying? Ooh, excuse me. It wasn't trining, it was sextile. That's a sextile, not a trine. Sorry. So Venus sextile Pluto is going to intensify the feelings. It's going to make the feelings be much more, seem much deeper and in much more bas relief. So sharper edges, feelings are very clear and defined and intensified. Now with Uranus there also, and Uranus is kind of wide, it's like 4 or 5 degrees from Venus. We can still use it, but it's powerful, but not as powerful as if they were exactly on top of each other. So with a Venus-Uranus sextiling Pluto, there is the possibility for flare-ups in a relationship, but not bad ones. So these would be flare-ups of passion and excitement. So they excite each other or stimulate each other in that way that's welcome by each other. So they would be very successful at surprising each other and or having little secrets between them, little secret getaways and little love notes and all those things that put spice secretive wink wink nudge nudge inside joke sort of stuff between them would be very, very prominent in this relationship. Now for the problematic stuff. In the coalescent chart, one of the things that we're looking at, so right here, they're all kind of white, but they're really kind of together. So they're all in the basket together, even though they're not on top of each other. Venus, Uranus, and Neptune. So Venus, Uranus, Neptune in a coalescent chart together makes things a little weird. I'm not going to lie, it makes things a little weird. And Venus kind of sits like at the midpoint of Uranus, Neptune. So with Venus, Uranus, Neptune in a coalescent chart, what this would indicate is that this relationship functions better when it is driven to higher principles. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky because in real life, all higher principles are lovely. Taking the higher ground is lovely, but at the end of the day, we got to eat, got to sleep, got to clean the house, got to wash your, your feet, got to do all the base level stuff, right? And this Uranus-Neptune flanking both sides of Venus wants this to be a higher expression of living, right? Wants it to be a higher love, wants it to have all those supernatural, over the moon, way out in the stratosphere, high level living. So that combined with this sun moon, the new moon in the chart, with Jupiter and that inspiring, positive, sort of uplifting effect that they have on each other, there's a tendency for these two to not be very grounded and to be so, high-minded and kind of trying to live up to this idealistic image of what they think their life and a relationship should look like, that they're going to be very out of touch with the realities around them. Kind of like kind of like the Gwyneth Paltrow and Goop experience of but it's a relationship instead of beauty products for people who are completely out of touch with the working class. Yeah, rich people, gotta love them. My candle smells my vagina. If you haven't heard that story, she came out with a candle for her Goop line that says, "This candle smells like my vagina," because only rich people can do this stuff and think it's cute. Okay, sorry. Anyway, so that is all of this. Now, here's where the flying Neumann is. It is squaring Mars, right? Remember, Mars is your drive and your energy and your libido and a whole bunch of other things, but ultimately Mars is the momentum that moves you forward and gets things done. Action is taken where Mars is involved. Without Mars, you've got all hot air and no action. So Uranus, Venus, and Neptune all together, clustered together like this in hard aspect or challenging aspect to Mars. Again, here's issues of being out of touch or being not grounded enough or having this high-minded ideal, an idea of the world and how your life is going to look, what your relationship is going to be like, and how you need to get there. And then, this conflict with what you're actually working with. Now, the nice thing here, and listen, we're all adults, so don't yell at me. The nice thing here is that with this particular combination, and this is a repeat or an echo of what we're seeing in other parts of the chart, which really puts the underscore on this little notation about their compatibility. In this particular case, with Uranus, Neptune, and Venus all together, clustered together, squaring Mars, this also means that they're going to have an amazing intimate life. Holy Jesus, wow. And listen, let's be honest here. If you're offended by this, it's probably because you, like me, are a little jealous that you're not having this supernatural kind of personal life, right? But their intimacy and their ability to surprise each other and almost read each other telepathically, like that wonderful chemistry where you don't have to say, explain, direct, point, modify, not teach, none of it. It's all natural. It's so natural. It feels like you two fit each other like hand in glove, right? You don't even have to use words. You can just feel it and know it and be there like you're in each other's skin, right? That kind of intimacy. And boy, if that's not something to be jealous of, I don't know what is. So again, the upside for this particular aspect, is that kind of chemistry that they have between them. The problem, of course, oh my gosh, what is it? The catch-22 is that not a whole lot else in this relationship necessarily works as well as that. So listen, if you've ever been young, and this assumes that you've lived long enough that you can look back when you were young, right? You know that Sexual chemistry can make a lot of relationships happen that would have never come together otherwise because wow, holy cow, wow, right? It will really mess with your decision-making abilities. Beauty and sexual chemistry have been the ruin of many people because they were so intoxicated by the sexual chemistry or the beauty that they stopped thinking clearly. And made major life decisions, which turned out to be disastrous because nothing else was on the table that was working except beauty and large amounts of beauty or incredible amounts of sexual chemistry. And unfortunately, I think in this particular case, this is what we're dealing with here. So now what we really want to do, because we've done all the compatibility in the charts in the other video, is we also, as of right now, because they're already, geez, they haven't been back together a couple months and they're already talking about moving in together. This woman just cannot be alone. Good Lord, Jesus, Jennifer, let your heels cool for a second. Anyway, so now the thing is, like, if we looked at their charts and the transits and progression, like all the celestial influences that are impacting his chart and his life and kind of pushing him in one way or another, because you can kind of imagine that the planets in the sky as they're transiting or moving overhead are a lot like wind currents on the ocean, and your life is a boat. So those wind currents in the sails of your boat will determine what direction you're going in unless you actively use those wind currents or those celestial influences to move you in the direction you're trying to go. So think of it that way, right? So we're looking, he's in his boat, the wind is in his sails, so we're trying to figure out where he's being directed by the heavens above. Or even is he? Like, is this just a flash in the pan kind of fling, or is this something, you know, really seriously going on that the universe has participated in the making of? So the first thing is the progressed midheaven, okay, which is going to be over here. You can barely see it. It's right there, right? The progressed midheaven is conjuncting the transiting Uranus, right? So they're both right there. And in his chart, they are squaring his natal Mercury, right? So this is not great. So there are a couple of things that are happening here, right? So transiting Uranus, squaring his natal Mercury is going to make his decision, well, one, it's going to speed up his thinking process. So he's going to be very, very thinking a lot faster, having a difficult time sleeping, mind racing, and having some really phenomenal ideas. Don't discount the value of hard aspects by transit. So he's having some really genius ideas and a tremendously creative, active time mentally for himself. So if you're a creative person or you're in a creative field for living, this is a very fertile time to really get some fantastic stuff that appears out of nowhere, right? And spontaneously. So there's that, but it also leads to a lot of impulsive, rash decisions. So his mind is working faster than the rest of his common sense or his realism is. So it's great for ideas, not necessarily great for execution. Now, with that also, his progressed midheaven, his public image, his relationship with society, is taking this Uranus. So Uranus is on that. So he's up and ready and feeling the need for a radical change in how he defines himself in the world. So he may be changing his role or his focus as far as professional life is concerned, either retreating from Hollywood completely, because it would be something very drastic, right? Or he would give up acting and become like a full-time director or whatever. Like, it's a major changes are afoot because the challenge with Uranus on your midheaven or your progressed midheaven is that this is the time to reinvent yourself because you're feeling it. You're feeling like you've been stagnating. It's time to do something radically different. And this is where he's at. This is what he's feeling. He wants a big change in his life. He just doesn't know what it is. And he's not sure, like, yet how to do it, which is normal for everybody who work through that aspect. Okay, and with a progressed midheaven squaring his Mercury, now we do have a time of birth for him. We really do. With progressed midheaven squaring natal Mercury, and Mercury rules his 4th house of home and family and children, right, as well as his 12th house of ending in spiritual retreat and mental health. Ben is at a place in his life where many people at his age, because he's born in what, 72, so he's in his late 40s, so he's going through what some people would call a midlife crisis, but it's not really a midlife crisis, it's an awakening, right? So we've accomplished everything we're going to be able to accomplish in the years prior to now, and now we're standing at the crossroads going, do I keep going on this trajectory and just wait for death, retirement and death, or do I do something completely different? And where do I still have time to go do something else, right? Or correct mistakes, right? So that's kind of where he's at. Also, too, he would be having some issues. No, that's not true. Hang on. Sorry, mine's going off a different direction. Um, So that's where he's at. He's looking for spiritual meaning. He's having a spiritual awakening, whether he's aware of it or not. And he's looking to reinvent himself and his life and everything about it. So he's ready to be a completely different person and ready to have a completely different life. Up to and including, because Uranus is involved, being unapologetically himself. The thing with Uranus, and especially Uranus-Mercury combinations, is they honestly, genuinely, literally don't give a flying patootie what anybody thinks, right? So when transiting or progressed Uranus starts involving your Mercury, one, you have these moments or long years where you suddenly just don't care. You just don't care. I don't give a damn what people think of me. And you mean it. The other side of that is when you really, honestly, genuinely don't care what people think of you, you can come off as abrasive or rude or pick any number of unpleasant adjectives. And for those of you out there listening that do have Mercury-Uranus combinations, you know exactly what I'm talking about. People hate that you are so honest, shamelessly honest, and not sensitive about it because you don't actually care what people think of you. So you might want to tone that down a little bit, especially if you're taking transiting or progressed Uranus on top of your already existing Mercury-Uranus combination. Or I swear, people will shoot you. People will shoot you just to shut you up. Now, here is the most important thing happening right now, and this explains a lot about this sudden and really fast re-involvement of Ben and Jennifer. He's taking the eclipse that we are having right now as I make this video at 19 Gemini on his Saturn. So he is absolutely going into this, I mean, with eyes open, I'm sure, but also with a whole lot of impulsive eclipse energy and the finger of fate meddling in his personal affairs under this eclipse. And it's conjuncting his Saturn, which is challenging, potent, serious. This is some serious stuff. So there's definitely some fated activity happening here. So there's some karmic payoffs and lessons to be learned that will not be happy lessons as a result of all of this going on with this eclipse. But the question is, does Ben have marriage on his mind? Is Mr. Affleck considering marriage number 2? So when we look at questions about marriage, we always look at the 7th house. So Ben's Saturn, which is receiving this eclipse right now as we speak, rules his 7th house. He has Capricorn on the 7th, and we know this because we have a confirmed birth time for him. So the conditions of the 7th house and its ruler will give us some indication of what to expect for a marriage, or at least for the first marriage, right? And then, of course, we're going to do sequential house skipping to find any subsequent marriages after that. So we know the first marriage was with Jennifer Garner. So he's, for lack of a better expression, he's used up that house as far as the first marriage is concerned. So to see the conditions of the second marriage, we're going to jump to the next house over, which will be the 9th house. So we don't go to the 8th, we go to the 9th for the second marriage. Now the second marriage is ruled by Aquarius, which is ruled by Uranus. So this should tell us a lot about the conditions of the second marriage should he choose to get married a second time. Well, Uranus and Saturn, the ruler of 7th, are enshrined to each other, which promises a very amicable, functional marriage with very little excess stress or problems, which we're huge fans of. Now, the difference, of course, is that Uranus rules the second marriage instead of Saturn. So where the first marriage would have provided a tremendous amount of stability and support and structure to his life, it would have also carried, both of the marriages will, but the first marriage in particular would have carried very heavy karmic ties because it is Saturn ruled and Saturn sits in that 12th house. So there was a karmic debt or a karmic reward that had to be exchanged in that relationship that would have not, or would have activated as soon as the relationship became an official formal commitment, in this case in terms of in the in the confines of a marriage. So the second marriage is still pulling in the Saturn energy, and interestingly, this eclipse is definitely kicking off this Saturn energy, which is that marriage house energy. And because it is Uranus, this allows us to suspect or speculate that the second marriage would be with someone who's from a completely different environment or completely foreign to what we would expect from him, right? So this is not known or familiar type of person that he would marry, much like his friend Matt Damon, who I'm sure has the life that, because Ben is Venus in Cancer rising, I'm sure Matt has the life that Ben is envious of and really wants for himself. And in Matt's case, he married a woman who's completely different from what he grew up with or how he presents, because he married, I believe she's Latin. She's a minority female or female of color who was working as a waitress when Matt was a big Hollywood star. So there are huge, complete Uranian differences between the two of them in terms of their stations in life, how they looked, and their backgrounds. And Matt has had a very successful marriage with her ever since, which is beautiful. Great marriage, happy kids. Matt's living the life. So that's what you get with Uranus. You get people who are completely different from the norm or what people would expect, because it's completely unfamiliar with who you are, how you've grown, where you're at in life, all this sort of stuff. That's where the shock comes from, right? Because it's completely unexpected. So with Uranus ruling Ben's second marriage, we might expect that his second marriage will be to somebody who's completely different from things that are familiar to him or things that we would expect from him. Now, theoretically, this could be Jennifer Lopez, because certainly she's not a wasp, as Ben, I'm assuming Ben is a wasp as well. Jennifer Garner was definitely a wasp. But that may not be enough. So Jennifer Lopez may or may not fulfill the definition of that second house marriage. We're going to see, and very soon. However, because the eclipse is activating his marriage house ruler, he is definitely walking around these days with marriage on his mind. He really is thinking seriously about marriage. So the question now becomes just simply, who is it going to be and when it's going to happen? Now, this is the chart for Jennifer Lopez, and as a reminder, we do not have a time of birth for her, so you cannot use the houses in this chart. This is strictly an examination of planets. So right now, what we're looking at is, again, she took the eclipse to her Venus, and Venus rules relationships, Venus rules your values, Venus rules beauty and aesthetics and art. Venus rules all the things that feel good in life and bring us pleasure in life. So Jennifer Lopez right now has a heightened and exaggerated, because of this stimulating eclipse energy, a heightened and exaggerated desire and pursuit of things that bring her pleasure. So relationships, shopping, art, music, massage, whatever it is that feels good for her, she's going to be more likely to be drawn to very strongly at this time and indulge in, which may or may not be a good thing depending on what your budget is, right? Okay, so now if we look at her chart, she's got, I had to write the South Node in because it doesn't show up here. She has a South Node Pluto conjunction. So it's not a big deal except when it's being activated. And it's being activated right now with transiting Neptune in opposition to that. So the transiting Neptune in opposition to that South Node Pluto creates a bit of a sinkhole, not a sinkhole, like quicksand, or like unstable ground underneath your feet. So the difficulty with Neptune, South Node, Pluto together, especially Neptune by transit, is that the person often can't see clearly. It's like trying to look through a fog or look through like a dirty windshield, right? Like you can see, but it's not real sharp, clear images like it should be if you're traveling. So it's kind of the same thing. Right now, she is navigating primarily on instinct and feeling because her thought processes are not very clear. She's got a lot of deep, unconscious stuff that's coming up for her. And this is not her best time in terms of clarity. So uh, I don't know what to say except that she's in a very heightened, excitable time right now, and clear, wise decisions may not necessarily be as accessible to her now as they normally would be. And also with Neptune, South Node, Pluto, what you also get with this particular combination is the ability to lose yourself in fantasies or images of what life was like or what life could be. So all of your Joseph Campbell talks about this a lot with the hero journey, right? The myth of man, and why we're so involved in myths and stories. So everyone has in their mind from childhood an image or a story about what life should be like and who they are in that life. And, this is the thing that drives us. And it's not always good. Sometimes it's bad. Sometimes people, were damaged as kids and they got bad scripts in their head that they have to rewrite, like consciously go in and pull them up and do the work necessary to rewrite them. And that's not easy. That requires some serious investment of time and energy into therapy and self-reflection, and also assistance from professionals, not astrologers, who are able to help people navigate those psychological landmines. It's a big job, and it's not something you can do by yourself. So typically a lot of people don't do that because they just don't have the resources or the time or the awareness that that's the problem. When it's good, these are the things that drive people and have them on life missions, right? So everything that they do is about moving forward to embody and become this dream or vision that they've had since childhood. So right now, with all this Neptune, South Node, Pluto stuff going on with her, all those dreams from childhood are really taking over her thought processes. And this is what she's instinctively trying to recreate or move towards. Could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. We're not inside her head. Only she knows for sure how those scripts and stories work inside her mind. As this is happening, that South Node Pluto, right, is also being activated by her progressed sun. So right now is a very, very fertile time in terms of understanding ourselves and really facing these unconscious scripts in our head. Also, too, because now it becomes a Sun, Neptune, South Node, Pluto combination. What we're also dealing with is there's an over-romanticization of the men in her life, her father, her ex-boyfriends, the current boyfriend, her sons, but certainly men in the positions of authority in her life. There's an over-romanticizing of these men, as well as a desire to see people through a very specific lens. So luckily she's involved with Ben, who seems to be a very decent guy. But if she weren't involved with Ben, it is very possible that with this combination, whoever she did get involved with, she would try to make more of a hero than they actually were in her mind. So she would build them up in her mind to be more than they actually were. And we've seen people in relationships like this where we try to tell our friends, like, we don't know where you're getting this idea about who this guy is, or this girl, right? This is not who you think they are. Like, this is a bad move, dude. Like, you're imagining that they're as good as they are. And they don't listen. And they don't listen because all this is being driven by unconscious stories and scripts. So you gotta understand that people aren't stupid. All of us, every single one of us are driven by internal tapes that we may or may not be aware of have been activated. And right now, this is a lot of what's going on with her. So this eclipse is sitting dead on her Venus, like it's sitting dead on his Saturn, but they're having two very different experiences of this eclipse energy. He is feeling this energy as a moment of clarity and coming to a place in his life where he's really examining the long term and the long haul and really feeling the need to partner and settle down and build a life that will carry him forward into a whole new venture that he's still toying with. He's still not sure how he wants the second half of his life to look, but he wants to be radically different from what it is right now, and he wants someone to go the journey with him. She, on the other hand, is taking this eclipse to her Venus, involved in a T-square with her nodes and Pluto. So for her, this is a point of pivotal personal growth. So situations are presenting themselves that are giving her the opportunity to go inward and reflect and really untangle all the tangles in the scripting and the stories she's created or had embedded in her as a child. Now, whether she chooses to work through this or not, we don't know. It's completely up to her. One of the other things that's interesting about this is when you get a South Node Pluto and a Venus activation like this with an eclipse, right? What you're also going to get is a lot of compulsive behavior. So I don't know, and I don't think that her relationship with Ben is a compulsive thing, although she does have a little difficulty staying single for more than 5 minutes. I'm just saying. Because Venus also rules the things that gives us pleasure. It's entirely possible that her money management may go out the window right now, as Venus South Node Pluto can also lead to compulsive spending, or compulsive investing, or compulsive hoarding, or compulsive redecorating. So we'll see. Now, she's got some financial problems coming up next year, so this may be some of what's going on, just the compulsive financial stuff, along with the other compulsions that are kicking off with this eclipse. But we don't know, because again, we're not our financial manager. We don't live with her, but certainly we will find out. I'm sure it'll hit the papers if that's what it comes to. So the question is marriage on her mind also? And the answer is, when is it not on her mind? This is a woman who is a serial monogamist. Every relationship she has because she's in love with a person. And when you're in love with a person, of course you want to get married. So I don't know that this is necessarily a fair question in her case. So the next question is, well, will she get married? And that's a little bit different. So unfortunately, we don't have a time of birth for her, so we can't locate houses and rulers of houses. We have no idea what the ruler of her 7th house is. I mean, I'm certain with time we could probably figure it out. But for now, we don't have that. And all we do know is that she's taking this eclipse on her Venus. So relationships are huge and significant right now, because there's an extreme exaggerated desire for social value on top of all of the other things that go with this eclipse and Venus, pleasure, indulgence, all this sort of stuff, things that bring us pleasure. So I think right now with the eclipse on her Venus, especially with that South Node Pluto combination, I'm sorry, both nodes, North and South Node and Pluto combination, the compulsiveness, if she had any desire to be married before, she really wants to get married now. Like, she wants to just get married and stay married. But that's not necessarily the best way to walk into a marriage, because this is all compulsively driven by unconscious things. And this is a very important time for her. If she wants to get the most out of this and actually find her happy ending, she's got to get in and do the work on herself. She cannot follow these compulsive behaviors. She's got to stop and do the internal work on herself to find out what's driving this train. Whether she does that or not, well, I don't know. So we'll see. Time will tell. Now, I wanted to bring this slide back from the previous video where we did about her and Ben. And I just want to point something out because I thought this was really interesting. So the first thing is, remember, this eclipse is happening right here on his Saturn, her Venus, and because they've got an exact Venus-Saturn conjunction. So they're taking this eclipse together, and the two of them being together while taking this eclipse together certainly is going to strengthen the effects of that eclipse in their personal lives. Venus and Saturn conjunct across charts can be seen as a challenging aspect, and it is. But the other thing I just want to point out here is that in many instances of long-term marriages, successful marriages, there are strong Saturn contacts between the chart. The reason is Saturn is about commitment and obligation and responsibility and accountability and all those not fun grown-up things nobody ever really wants to deal with. So the thing about it is, in successful long-term marriages, one of the things that they do talk about is that ultimately it's about being responsible to your partner and being accountable for your actions and being committed for the long haul. Like your long-term successful marriages aren't successful because they're only hanging around when it's convenient or it feels good to them. Through the uncomfortable parts and the difficult parts and the challenging parts and the parts where they really wonder why they're there at all, when it would be so much easier to go find somebody else, or do something else, they still work through it with each other and stay the course because they understand what's expected of each other, right? Which is also why arranged marriages work. They understand, most of them, what is expected of each other. So rather than this impulsive, hormonally driven, libido version of love, long-term successful marriages are built on rules. We understand what's expected of each other, and this is what we're doing, and this is how we hold ourselves accountable, and we take responsibility for ourselves and our partners. And they are friends. They like each other. So that cooling of the erotic nature is not necessarily a bad thing in a successful marriage for the long haul. Listen, hormones and libido, all that sexual chemistry is nice, and it definitely lubricates the friction in the relationship to make it easier to spend your life with somebody sharing a house. But at the end of the day, that goes away too. So when you're looking for long-term successful marriages, not relationships, but marriages, contractual marriages, because contracts come under Saturn as well, you want to see Saturn aspects between the chart. Obviously, if they're challenging aspects like this, you want to see a lot of supportive aspects to offset that, because there has to be some reward for being in this relationship and having to go through the challenges, the endurance tests that are required with challenging Saturn aspects. So reading cross Saturn aspects in charts can be a little tricky, but they are important, and they're typically present in some form or fashion in successful long-term marriages. Now, the other thing I wanted to point out here that I thought was really interesting, and I just want to bring it up again, this Jupiter-Uranus conjunct Pluto cross aspect right here. So one of the things that I would definitely expect, especially with her Venus being activated by the eclipse, because Venus rules women and beauty, is the Jupiter-Uranus conjunct Pluto creates a tremendous amount of charisma or magnetism around the couple. So it enhances their ability to be larger than life and attractive to other people. Like it's what they would call the power couple, right? People see the two of you together and it's like you're suddenly both your values amplified. So I would expect, especially right now with this eclipse activating especially her Venus, that she should have all kinds of work and opportunities coming out of the woodwork. So I'm not entirely sure that her relationship with Ben will not rekindle her ambitions and her desire to be a movie star or a mega mogul, whatever it is that she's got her eye on, right? World domination, I suppose. And the offers will come out of the woodwork over the next 6 months during this time, because the two of them together amplify their natural charisma with the general public even more so. And I just wanted to touch base on these Saturn aspects again, because remember, for long-term committed relationships, we want to see Saturn aspects. The Saturn will hold things together. It will literally close and lock the gate, and nobody's leaving. Like, you're here, you're staying. So we know that the eclipse occurs with their Venus-Saturn conjunction, right? If you look, the other thing is in the cross aspects between these charts, they have a Moon-Saturn opposition, right? Right here. And that's a challenging place. So we already have a Venus-Saturn conjunction, which is not the best in terms of compatibility and being comfortable with someone over the long haul. Now we've also got a Moon-Saturn opposition, which can be extremely alienating when we are at our most vulnerable. It's not an easy position to have. It requires a lot of work to make it tolerable in a relationship. And we went, just so you guys know, we went over all of that, the Moon-Saturn opposition, in the other video. I'll put a link to that below. But these two Saturn aspects, which we want to have in a chart, are not great aspects. And the Moon rules the daily life and the home environment and the places where we should feel safe and secure. And Venus rules the things that bring us pleasure in life and that make us happy. With Saturn involved, we'd at least like to see Saturn making a positive, harmonious aspect with one of these planets. Unfortunately, it's not. It's in fact doubling down and reinforcing the challenging effects of Saturn, the cooling of sympathy, the cooling of the love nature, right? The lack of sympathy, the rigid expectations. Ultimately, I would say, and nobody's asking me because I'm just, you know, a little astrologer on YouTube somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, right? I would say that this is not an ideal relationship for a marriage. This will not go as easily or well as expected if they were to get married. Because remember, Saturn doesn't really activate until you make it official, right? And like the official formal commitment, hence marriage. And also too, I'm not completely sure that these two would be able to end their marriage amicably, or even be able to continue liking each other after their marriage. It certainly won't be the same thing as, you know, Jennifer Garner and Ben. I mean, maybe on the surface it'll appear that way, but it will be difficult, and it may actually prove to be one of those things where it's just very difficult for them to break the marriage, no matter how badly they want to get out of it. So I would be very circumspect about encouraging these people to get married to each other. But, you know, listen, when you have as much sexual chemistry as these two have with each other, they're not listening to anybody. So anybody can tell you that's ever been young and in love, like the heart wants what it wants, and the libido wins out every single time. So live and learn. And again, we'll see. At the end of the day, with all that's going on between these charts, and certainly no one asking our opinion, time will tell all in the end. We've just got to wait and see how it plays out. And I'll tell you something, for the next 6 months, her love life, her personal life, along with her finances, are going to be completely topsy-turvy, literally like a carnival, right? So there's all sorts of unexpected twists, turns, and surprises coming for her. And that will be interesting to watch. So we haven't seen the end of some of these players in her life. So if she thinks it's going to be a smooth walk down the aisle to the altar, I don't think it's going to be that straightforward. And also for him, because it's involving his 12th house Saturn, he's already going to be dealing with a lot of deep, heavy life issues. So if he's involved with her, and she's got paramours and suitors and, you know, people trying to court her from all different directions, you know, literally trying to come in and meddle in the rosy garden path to the altar for the two of them. These things, because his Saturn's involved with this eclipse, these are things that will really push all of his deepest fears and insecurities buttons. So this will definitely get him where he is the most sensitive and unsure and easily hurt. So if they make it through the 6 months, it will be impressive. And what's going to be even more impressive is everything that happens along the way. So let's keep an eye on that. This has been the compatibility examination for Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez they were together 2002 to 2004 and back together again 2021 until who knows. So this is the end of part 4, Jennifer Lopez and her men. We are going to continue this series. Please stay tuned. If you enjoyed this and you'd like to get notifications of the next videos coming up as they come up, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. If you enjoyed it or you didn't enjoy it, please by all means give me some feedback, thumbs up or thumbs down. Comments are always appreciated if you can add to this and share with the rest of us. And finally, if you have somebody who's a Jennifer Lopez fan and would enjoy hearing this report because they're doing their own speculation about whether these two make it to the altar this time or not, you might want to share it with them as well. Or anybody who's learning astrology and wants to learn how to examine charts through the lens of compatibility. All right, we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.